friends. We're going to keep reading The Little Prince. Now we're on chapters 5 and 6. Let's get started. Little Prince, chapter 5. Every day I learned something about the Little Prince's planet, about his departure, about his journey. It would come quite gradually in the course of his remarks. This is how I learned on the third day about the drama of the Baobabs. This time, too, I had the sheep to thank, for suddenly the little prince asked me a question, as if overcome by a grave doubt. Isn't it true that sheep eat bushes? Yes, that's right. Ah, I'm glad. I didn't understand why it was so important that sheep could eat bushes, but the little prince added, and therefore they eat baobabs, right? I pointed out to the little prince that baobabs are not bushes, but trees, as tall as churches, and that even if he took a whole herd of elephants back to his planet, that herd couldn't finish off a single tree. The idea of a herd of elephants made the little prince laugh. We'd have to pile them on top of one another. But he observed, before they grow big, baobabs start out by being little. True enough, but why do you want your sheep to eat those? He answered, Oh, come on, you know, as if we were talking about something quite obvious. And I was forced to make quite the great mental effort to understand his problem all by myself. And in fact, on the little prince's planet, there were, as on all planets, good plants and bad plants. The good plants come from good seeds, and the bad plants come from bad seeds. But the seeds are invisible. They sleep in the serenity of the ground until one of them decides to wake up. Then it stretches and begins to spout quite timidly at first, a charming, harmless little twig reaching out towards the sun. If it's a radish seed or rose bush seed, you can let it spout all it likes. But if the seed is of a bad plant, you must pull out the plant right away, as soon as you can recognize it. As it happens, there was terrible seeds on the prince's planet. Baobab seeds. The planet's soil was infested with them. Now, if you attend to a baobab too late, you can never get rid of it again. It overgrows the whole planet. Its roots pierce right through, and if the planet is too small, then there are too many trees and it'll burst into pieces. It's a question of discipline, the little prince told me later on. When you've finished washing and dressing each morning, you must tend to your planet. You must be sure to pull up the baobabs regularly as soon as you can tell them apart from the rose bushes, which they closely resemble when they're very young. This is very tedious work, but very easy. And one day he advised me to do my best to make a beautiful drawing for the edification of the children where I live. If they travel someday, he told me, it could be useful to them. Sometimes there's no harm in postponing your work until later, but with baobabs, it's always a catastrophe. I knew one planet that was inhabited by a lazy man, and he had neglected 3 bushes. So, following the little prince's instructions, I have drawn that planet. I don't much like assuming the tone of a moralist, but the danger of the baobabs is so little recognized, and the risks run by anyone who might get lost on an asteroid are so consequential that for once I am making an exception to my habitual reserve. I say, Children, watch out for the baobabs. It's to warn my friends of danger, which they, like myself, have long been unaware that I work so hard to draw. The lesson I'm teaching is worth the trouble. You may be asking, why are there no other drawings in this book as big as this one? And that's the planet, and there are the trees. As the drawing of the baobabs, the simple answer is I tried, but I couldn't manage it. Whenever I drew the baobabs, I was inspired by a sense of urgency. Chapter 6. Oh, little prince, gradually this was how I came to understand your sad little life. For a long time your only entertainment was the pleasure of sunsets. I learned this new detail on the morning of the 4th day when you told me, I really like sunsets. Let's go look at one now. But we have to wait. What for? For the sun to set. At first you seemed quite surprised, and then you laughed at yourself, and you said to me, oh, I think I'm still at home. Indeed, when it's noon in the United States, the sun, as everyone knows, is setting over France. If you could fly to France in 1 minute, you could watch the sunset. Unfortunately, France is much too far. But on your tiny planet, all you had to do was to move your chair a few feet, and you could watch the twilight whenever you wanted to. One day I saw the sunset 44 times. And a little later you added, you know, when you're feeling very sad, sunsets are wonderful. On the day of the 44 times, were you feeling very sad? But the prince didn't answer. Friends, I know we're supposed to stop there. Usually I only read 2 chapters a day, but those 2 chapters were super duper short. I think I'm going to read chapter 7 also. So next time we'll read chapters 8 and 9, okay? Chapter 7. On the 5th day, thanks again to the sheep, another secret of the little prince's life was revealed to me. Abruptly, with no preamble, he asked me, as if it were the fruit of a problem long pondered in silence. If a sheep eats bushes, does it eat flowers too? A sheep eats whatever it wants, whatever it finds. Even flowers that have thorns? Yes, even flowers that have thorns. Then what good are thorns? I didn't know. At that moment, I was very busy trying to unscrew a bolt that had gotten jammed in my engine. I was quite worried, for my plane crash was beginning to seem extremely serious, and the lack of drinking water was making me fear the worst. What good are thorns? The little prince never let go of a question once he had asked it. I was annoyed by my jammed bolt, and I answered without thinking. Thorns are no good for anything. They're just like flowers' way of being mean. Oh. But after a silence, he lashed out at me with a sort of bitterness. I don't believe you. Flowers are weak. They are naive. They reassure themselves whatever way they can. They believe their thorns make them frightening. I made no answer. At that moment, I was thinking, if this bolt stays jammed, I'll knock it off with a hammer. Again, the little prince disturbed my reflections. Then you think flowers? No, not at all. I don't think anything. I just said whatever came to my head. I'm busy here with something serious. He stared at me astounded. Something serious? He saw me holding my hammer, my fingers black with grease, bent over an object he was regarding as very ugly. You talk like all the grown-ups. That made me feel a little ashamed. But he added mercilessly, you confuse everything. You've got it all mixed up. He was really very annoyed at me. He tossed his golden curls in the wind. I know a planet inhabited by a red-faced gentleman. He never smelt a flower. He's never looked at a star. He's never loved anyone. He's never done anything except add numbers. And all day long he says over and over again, just like you, I'm a serious man. I'm a serious man. And that puffs him up with pride. But he's not a man at all. He's a mushroom. He's a what? A mushroom. The little prince was now quite pale with rage. 4 million years of flowers have been producing thorns, and 4 million years of sheep have been eating them all the same. And it's not serious trying to understand why flowers go through such trouble to produce thorns that are good for nothing. It's not important. The war between the sheep and the flowers, it's no more serious and important than the numbers that fat red gentleman is adding up. Suppose I happen to know a unique flower, one that exists nowhere in the world except for on my planet. One that a little sheep can wipe out in a single bite one morning, just like that, without even realizing what he's doing. That isn't important. His face turned red now as he went on. If someone loves a flower of which just one example exists among all millions and millions of stars, that's enough to make him happy when he looks up at the stars. He tells himself, my flower is up there somewhere. But if the sheep eats the flower, then for him, it's as if suddenly all the stars went out. And that isn't important? He couldn't say another word. All of a sudden, he just burst out sobbing. Night had fallen. I dropped my tools. What did I care about my hammer, about the bolts, about thirst, about death? There was, on one star, on one planet, on mine, on Earth, a prince who must be consoled. I took him in my arms, and I rocked him, and I told him, the flower you love is not in danger. I'll draw you a muzzle for your sheep. I'll draw you a fence for your flower. I didn't know what else to say, how clumsy I felt. I didn't know how to reach him or where to find him. It's so mysterious, the land of tears. Poor little prince, he's so sad. All right, friends, I will read you chapters 8 and 9 on another day. Goodbye.